So next up, remote presentation from Bartolomea Hirsch or Bartek. Tidy your code with Robotidy. Let's hear it.
Hi everyone, my name is Bartolomea Hirsch and I'm author of several open source projects in Robot Framework ecosystem such as RoboCop, Sherlock and Robotidy. And this talk is about tidy your code with Robotidy. More than a year passed since last RoboCon, where I showed you our new tool, Robotidy, for the first time. And for those of you that didn't use it yet, Robotidy is a code formatter for Robot Framework code. There was formatter shipped with Robot Framework already, Tidy, but it was deprecated in the last 5.0 release in favor of Robotidy, which is being developed as a separate project. And this last information is one of the proofs how much Robotidy matured since last year. When I showed you Robotidy, it was actually still in beta phase and it grew a lot. And I will show you a few slides with the most important numbers. So let's start from the number of transformers. And by the way, transformer is a code formatter that is responsible for one separate subject. For example, splitting two long line or ordering the tags. During our first release, we had just 6 transformers and its numbers grew 4 times up to the 24 transformers. And not only the number of transformers grew, but also the existing ones were vastly improved. And another metric, merge pull request. For our first release, we were just after 18 pull requests. But during the last year, we reached the 154 merge pull requests. Just from this number, you can see how many features and changes were added to our tool. I, of course, cannot even list all changes in this talk, and that's why I will show what I think is the most important. I often say that RoboCop, the other tool that I'm developing with Mateusz, is like Pylint but for Robot Framework. And Robotidy is for Robot Framework like Black for Python. But it's actually not true. Black tries to take your mind of the decision how your code should look like. And that's nice. But in Robot Framework, we offer so much flexibility with the syntax that it was really hard to find the best defaults. That's why Robotidy, when it's formatting the code, uses some sensible defaults. But you can configure most of the transformers for your needs. If you don't like the order we are sorting your settings, or you prefer to disable transformers, maybe you want to extend what Robotidy is doing by writing your own transformer. Everything is possible. You don't have to, but you have the liberty of doing so. That's why when somebody would ask me what is the most important change that occurred since last RoboCon in Robotidy, I actually would not mention the cool and shiny features that I spent weeks or multiple days on. For me, most important is how easy to read is our documentation and also how several features were implemented from the community ideas. For the documentation part, if you allow user to configure your tool, you need to make it obvious for them how to do it and what they will get from it. Let me show you on this example. Like most command line tools, Robotidy has help command to show you all possible options and features you can supply to the tool. But over the last year, the number of features grew and it started to be hard to read and to find any useful information, even for me, the author of the tool. That's why I've decided to prettify and tidy our output messages. And I did that with Python click and reach modules. So currently when I run the help command, you can see that all options are grouped into relevant groups. For example, you have the work modes or the documentation group, or if you want to set the global formatting settings, all options relevant to this topic are here. Let's assume that you want to know what transformers are included in Robotidy. There is a documentation group which contains the list option for listing all available transformers and description option for showing the documentation for the selected transformer. So let's start with the list option. there you have the list of all our transformers, and mostly you can guess what the given transformer is doing just from the name. For example, the normalized new lines will normalize all new lines and white space. The order tags will order your tags. The inline if will transfer your if blocks to the inline ifs whenever it's applicable. And you can see that not all transformers are enabled by default. That's because some transformers are created for specific needs. For example, sorting the keywords in keyword section or ordering tags. Not all people want to run them. That's why you can only do it if you configure it from the command line. If you want to learn more about specific transformer, you can use the Robotidy test from the description option with the name of the transformer. So let's say replace returns, which were added recently for the 5.0 release. But let's try actually to make typo to show you how our error handling looks like. So whenever you do a simple typo, Robotidy also tries to guess what you actually mean and help you to supply the correct name. For example, in this case, it suggests that I actually mean replace returns instead of replace return. So let's fix my mistake and run it again. Okay, so there is the description of our transformer. This transformer replaces return statements such as return in square brackets or return from keyword with the new return statement which was added in last release. And there is the code example with the code before running the Robotidy and after transforming it with this transformer. And at the end of every transformer description, there is link to the external documentation. So let's try it and see how it looks like. Every transformer in Robotidy have its own separate page in our documentation. And in this case, it contains the same information you could see in the command line, but also it's extended a bit with improved code examples. For example, the before and after code snippets are in those handy tabs. So you can easily see how the code changes before and after running the Robotidy. Let's also see the other transformers. For example, the inline if, which was also added for the last 5.0 Robot Framework release. Inline if replace if blocks with inline if their length after the transforming will be less than specified line length. So in this case, if the if blocks is short enough, in this case you have just if condition and return, it will be replaced with inline if. So you can see how it was transformed with much more concise syntax. Also, there is description what will happen if your if contains any assignment. It should also take it into account and put it before the if. Of course, granted that every branch in your if blocks have the same assigned types. If the number of assigned is different or the name of variables is different, it will just skip the if. You can also configure the line length, which is used to determine whether the if block should be transformed to the inline if. So you can see how easy it is to find information on what Robotidy is doing from our documentation, both from the command line and externally hosted one. So whenever you are interested in any particular transformer, you just can go there and read documentation on this given transformer. And if you are just starting with Robotidy, there is also the quick start page, which show you and explain the basic work modes of the Robotidy, how you can configure it using the configuration files, or use any other basic option. With so many transformers and options, features, it's easy to get lost. That's why I think the most important for any open source project is actually documentation. So you can easily see how you can start working with the tool and configure it for your needs. And I think that open source projects are community projects by default, and they are shaped by other people's needs, and others can easily join them and help to develop them. And it's also the case in Robotidy. You can see in our repository in GitHub that we have already multiple contributors to our source code. But I think that the biggest factor is that most features or raised bugs originate from someone else. For people that are using our tools and just think how it can be improved, how something can be added to the Robotidy to make it better. And that's Robotidy in RoboCon 2022. Thank you everyone, and I hope you will find Robotidy even better tool now after the 1 year, and of course in the future as it still continues to grow.